Let's get stuck in. So, good afternoon. It's good afternoon, isn't it? Good afternoon. Welcome to episode three of Mindfulness Mondays. It's been 2 weeks since I started the first episode, and it always seems to just go on really, really quickly. What I'm going to talk about today is this idea of being versus doing, and this is something which came from. It's been in my head for a while, but it was interesting. I was going to share my screen a little bit here and just show you that I was asked by one of my coaches last year, not the classic question which coaches tend to ask, which is, well, what do you want to do? What's your vision? All this kind of stuff. It was, what do you want to be? And I loved that question because it opened things up for me in the most amazing way. This idea of doing and versus being is quite interesting. And I'm just going to skim to the next slide here that when I used to think about doing, it was, I'm picking something up, I'm doing it, I'm moving, I'm going in a particular direction, I'm doing something. And being for me was the opposite of, just sit down and do not a lot, just chill and relax. And actually, when we start to go into the mindfulness arena, we start to look at the mindfulness research, it changes. And there's a whole different kind of arena about this, that we're not talking about physically doing something or physically being. We're talking about what goes on in your head up here. And just, if you have a look at this chart here, look at this table, doing, automatic, head-based, mental time travel, things must be different. Being, the opposites of these, automatic becomes conscious. Head-based becomes sensing. Mental time travel becomes present. Things must be different turns to allowing. And I'm sure that if you look at the doing column, you can really find some times where there's been things in your life that you are doing automatically. The classic one is driving a car. You get in a car, you drive it down the road. When you first learn to drive, you are conscious, you are being, you're aware of what's going on. When you've done it for a while, it all changes. You don't notice that you've driven 20 miles, but you've obviously got there in a very automatic and unconscious way because you're doing. And I had to learn things. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but imagine if you were to take a moment and you were to do that journey and you were to be conscious of everything. You were to narrate where you were. That sign means this. I can see this. And it takes me back to my learning to drive days where I used to do that all the time. This idea of being headspace versus sensing, I live in my head quite a lot, and I have done in the past, and it's very hard for me to actually come out of my head into my body. It's work in progress for me. I've had conversations with people in recent months where I've been very headspaced and very analytical. And what I've done is I've stopped and I've gone, hang on a minute, I'm just going to take this to somewhere else in my body. And quite often that's the heart. And the conversation is very, very different because it's coming from a place of sensing what's going on and using different emotions. It's mental time travel. And this idea of, and there's another slide at the moment where I go more into this, where I'm thinking about the future and about what I've got to do and all of these things which are in my life, my to-do list and all these bits of paper around and, oh my God, anxious, I'm just all over the place. Or you're in the past where you're going, I remember those happy times, or I remember those sad times, or I want to avoid that. I don't want to be part of that. I remember something bad which happened and I'm bringing it with me. Somebody spoke to me a while ago about this and they talked about the fear and the anxiety side of where you are and reminiscing and all kinds of worry which comes with being in that mental time travel, that head-based space. And then the last one, things must be different. Shouldn't be like this. It should be different. That shouldn't happen. Versus it is happening. What do I do with this situation now? Because it's happening anyway. I can't change that it's happening. And I can argue that it shouldn't be like this until I'm blue in the face, and it's just not going to work. This idea of being a goal-orientated state. I have to be getting towards a goal. I have to be achieving something. And there's in the book I've been reading recently, it's a book by Rebecca Crane, which is on mindfulness-based cognitive therapy. Really interesting book, and it talks about the 8-week mindfulness-based cognitive therapy courses, which come from the mindfulness-based stress reduction courses, which come from John Kabat-Zinn's stuff. And there's these two ideas around doing. that we are trying to either reduce the gap between our desired reality and our current reality. So where we are at the moment is not where we want to be. Where do we want to be? Well, I want to be somewhere different. So we're trying to reduce that gap. And coaching people, we talk about this a lot. What steps do you need to take to get from where you are to where you want to be? How do we break those steps down? How do we achieve those things? And the second thing with this doing and being goal orientated is you want to increase the gap between our experience and the undesired state. And, it's where we are at the moment versus, well, I've already been I've already had an experience before which I didn't like. I want to get away with that. And these two potentially are looking at running towards something which is good, running towards something which you really, really want, versus running away from something that you don't want. And I remember talking to a guy recently where he said to me, I don't know what I want to do. I said, okay, so let's look at what you don't want to do. This is that idea of making the gap smaller between where you are and where you want to be, or making it bigger between where you are and where you don't want to be. Past and future stuff. It's really interesting when you start playing with it. But there's a great quote which I came across. It was last August I first came across this when I started listening to and reading the work of Byron Katie. When you argue with reality, you lose, but only 100% of the time. And I was listening to one of her audios where she talked about this, and she was actually live coaching someone. And the question she asks is it true? That's the first question she asks in anything is it true? And she's this really big advocate of the fact that you cannot argue with reality. And that acceptance which comes with being means that I'm accepting this in this moment. I can now do something with that. But if I'm constantly arguing that things shouldn't be like this, or I could do this, or I would do this, instead of present moment, you're always going to lose. I love that quote from her. It's a brilliant, brilliant quote. So with all that in mind, that we've got this doing space and we've got this being space, and the question my coach asked me about, what do I want to be? How do we move towards being? And I think that's a brilliant question, and maybe one which is, for some of you, might be really easy to answer. For some of you, it may not be easy to answer. But I'm going to invite you to look at how you can answer this question yourself. But I'm also going to give you something which may help you to do this. And it's just to take a very, very simple, mindful breath. And what I mean by that is, just for a moment, wherever you are now, unless you're watching this while you're driving, which you shouldn't be, wherever you are now, just take a moment just to stop, have a seat or stand, whatever works for you, and just take a moment to do a mindful breath. Just take a moment to enjoy the sensation of the air coming in through your nose, down into your lungs, it expanding your whole body, and then you're relaxing. That is one of the simplest places you can be to start being, is just to come back to what's going on in your body. Come back and just be present in this moment. Give it a go. That's my invitation to you today, is to try and be more being. And thank you for listening.